think we're recording here. Hello, everyone out there from the SalesDevSquad community. It is your host, Mateo Elvira of the SalesDevSquad podcast, back with another episode. Today, we will be speaking to one of my favorite sales leaders, someone who personally inspired me to become an SDR. You might know him formerly to be the host of the SDR Chronicles and currently helps empower sales teams as a part of the JBarrows Sales Training Group. Mr. Morgan J Ingram.
What's going on, everybody? Happy to be here.
Morgan, thanks so much for being a guest here on the podcast. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I remember being like in high school and college watching episodes of the SDR Chronicles.
Yep.
And I don't really think there was much content out there at the time that was fully dedicated to sales development. So again, it's an honor to have you on the podcast here, man. Hope to inspire tons and thousands of other SDRs just like myself. But let's just go ahead and run into it here, Morgan. For viewers out there who maybe might not be too familiar with your work and kind of what you're into now, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about kind of your background into tech sales and what you're currently up to over at the JBarrows Group?
Yeah. So my background started off, first job was an SDR. And then, as Mateo was talking about, I started the SDR Chronicles, which was documenting my journey as an SDR. I still, from time to time, post content on there to keep it relevant and keep people involved in the sales development and prospecting space. And because of that brand that I built, that got me my opportunity at JBarrows Sales Training, where I now travel the world and train reps on how to prospect effectively, cold call effectively, and break into net new accounts that they're trying to get into. So that's what I do as of today, and it's been a fun journey so far.
Awesome. Really appreciate that, Morgan. And like, did you know, like, you always wanted to get into tech sales? Like, how did you like find that was like a relative opportunity to you that kind of suited your skills and just like interests? Like, how did you even find out that like you could actually have a job selling software and make good money doing it?
Yeah. So I don't think anyone at the end of the day, it's probably less than 1% people were like, I really want to get into sales. It's a very rare. Now I know some people who told me that they did and their reasoning makes sense, but again, there's not a lot of people. And so my thing is I never wanted to go into sales. I wanted to go be a sports agent. I saw Jerry Maguire and I was like, yo, that's what I want to do. It didn't pan out. And how I found out about it was I was doing public speaking and I went to here local to Atlanta, the National Speakers Association, and someone there told me about a company that just got funding and I should go apply for a SDR role. And so I applied for multiple roles and I got rejected and denied from a lot of roles. And the one that I ended up finding was the one that I cold called and got into that role. So that's how I got into tech sales. That's how I got an SDR role, was I cold called the director of sales to get that job.
Awesome. And that was Terminix, right?
Yep, it's Terminus. Yeah, not Terminex, because that's the annex term. That's the bug exterminator. So that's you don't get them mixed up. Yeah. So we went to Terminus.
Terminus, very cool.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Morgan. And like I know I kind of alluded to earlier, like you know, when I was in college and high school, and I was looking at different career opportunities in tech and stumbled across like the SDR Chronicles, and like you alluded to as well, like, no one was really kind of putting this content out there to help educate like the community and just anyone who would be interested in an opportunity like this. And that also kind of helped spark my interest to start this podcast as well. But I'm curious to learn like what kind of sparked you to actually like create the SDR Chronicles, and like from what I'm experienced so far, like it truly takes commitment to like post an episode after episode after episode, and you have like hundreds of episodes on YouTube. Like I'd love to hear like what got you started and like what kind of kept you motivated throughout like the whole process of just continuing to push out content.
Yeah, so there's three things that kind of listen to that. So one is there was a blog post before I started as an SDR. It's a leader called Ralph Barcy, and he has been in the sales development, sales leadership game for a while. And he wrote a blog post on Sales Hacker that said, hey, an SDR should start a YouTube channel because it has never been done. And so that sparked my interest because I was like, I had made content in the past before I started the SDR Chronicles. So I was intrigued and I messaged him and told him, hey, I'm going to start this. And he was like, okay, cool, we'll see. And then that 2-3 months ago, or 2 months from then, I went to a conference and Gary Vaynerchuk was the keynote. And he said, hey, if you're a sales rep, you should build a personal brand. And this was 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. So people really weren't talking about it as much as they're talking about today. Like every single post talks about it. This was before the catalyst moment of it. So he said, hey, a sales rep should start a personal brand. And so I connected with him after for like 2 to 5 minutes. And I asked him, hey, I have this idea on starting this type of YouTube channel and not even a podcast, just a YouTube channel. And he was like, yeah, you should do that. That will help you break into the marketplace, even though you're just starting out in your career. And that led into the third point, which is white space. Because when I started off as an SDR, I didn't see any other SDRs posting content. And I was like, why is that the case? I just was confused. So I just took it upon myself is if you want to see the change, you needed to be the change yourself. So I just was like, I'm going to create this YouTube channel and I'm going to call it the SDR Chronicles because it's going to document my journey. And the reason I stayed consistent is because I know if I stayed consistent, it would lead into momentum, and momentum leads into opportunity. Opportunity leads into results. And then also on top of that as well, the goal was they reach 100 because Ralph, who wrote that blog post, said, hey, I'll come on the 100 episode if you get to 100. So that was the goal, is to get to 100. So that's what helped me be consistent and continuously produce.
Absolutely. Really appreciate that, Morgan. Again, like huge fan of that podcast. Like it really helped me understand the role and like just what it really takes to be successful. So really thank you for pushing out that content. And yeah, like super stoked about like your current role, obviously Director of Sales Execution Evolution, and love your guys' content on LinkedIn and how you guys really just focus on empowering sales reps. Morgan, I'm curious, like from your experience, like for maybe any sales leader out there or just sales rep that's just listening, like how important is it to like empower SDRs in any sales org, like just empowering and making your SDRs feel like just powerful human beings on the phone?
Yeah.
Like how important is that and relative to success in any sales org in your opinion?
Yeah, for sure. My question back to you, and I the answer on this one is, do you feel like they're not empowered enough, and why so?
I feel like it's a tough job, and me personally, I don't feel like there's enough like empowerment that could go around because it is a tough job. Like SDRs face constant rejection on a day-to-day basis, so just having like that constant flow of empowerment and like support, I feel like is a necessity in my opinion. But would love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like my opinion on it is that I always tell people that the role itself is simple, right? You're making calls, you're scheduling meetings, sending out emails, but it's not easy. It's a mental game. And so the importance of it is that every leader should be elevating your SDRs, BDRs, ADRs, whatever they're called, as much as possible, because for the sole reason at the end of the day that it's all a mindset. So if your mindset is off, you won't be successful. You won't execute on the actions that you have. And so ultimately at the end of the day, what you should be focused on is how can you empower your SDR, BDR, ADRs to be the best reps that they can be. And the reason for that is because this is a breeding ground for your organization. This is the next leaders of your organization. These are the next AEs of your organization, marketers, customer success. So if you're not breeding those people in the right way and teaching them core values and making sure that they understand business acumen, you're going to have to hire externally. And that's a harder hire than promoting someone within. So always think about that every single time you're like, okay, I don't know if I want to do this or not. That's going to be the catalyst of success, is breaking that down and understanding that nature.
And like in your opinion, like what does empowering actually mean? Does it mean like giving a sales book to your rep? Does it mean just understanding what are their intrinsic motivations? Could you maybe provide some just quick examples of ways that an SDR manager or a leader within a sales org can empower their reps?
Yeah, so the best way to empower reps is podcasts. So, there's a ton of things you can do, but you can do podcasts like every single month. Hey guys, this is the podcast of the month. Everyone listen to it and get feedback on it. I know teams that do podcasts every single week and they do a recap at the end of the week. We personally, when I was a manager, we had daily stand-ups, 8:50 to 9 o'clock, give best practices, share struggles that are going on. I think also as well, giving them accolades, like having them ring the gong when a deal that they source close and things of that nature. So these are little things, but they go a long way, because at the end of the day, the SDR, BDR, ADR, whatever,
Mhm.
is being predicated on scheduling a meeting. And obviously when a sales rep closes a deal, that satisfaction is way greater than you scheduling a meeting. So you have to have this process, and you have to have these certain accolades that get people excited about what they're doing. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of deficiencies in the process across the board.
Really appreciate that, Morgan. And just onto the next segue here, like obviously you killed it in your role. You were an SDR, you got promoted to a team lead, and then ultimately got promoted to like a manager of the sales development, which obviously speaks volume on your performance at your time at Terminus. In your experience, like what are the 1% of like successful salespeople out there? Maybe it's not 1%, but you know, those people who just consistently crush it, consistently get promoted. Like, what are they doing out there that maybe other reps aren't? That makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, man, it comes down to consistency, right? Because I feel like a lot of people just aren't consistent, and success just comes down to consistency. You think about the YouTube channel that we just talked about, it's just consistency. I've produced content at a consistent pace. And if you're more consistent, you're going to do more than a lot of people, right? If you consistently work out 3 to 4 times a week for an entire year, you're going to be way further along than someone who works out 5 times a week, once a month, right? So the whole thing is like, that's the goal, is to be consistent. And the top reps are just very consistent. They know what they need to do day in, day out, which leads into time management, right? A lot of people aren't organized across the board. They don't know when to make their calls. They don't know when to send out the emails. They don't know when to follow up on an opportunity. So if you know how to organize your time and know when to make calls and know when to do these follows, just like I said, that's where I see the top reps being successful. And then at the end of the day, they're always seeking feedback. They're always asking managers, how can I get better? They're always asking their counterparts, how can I get better? And those are top 3 things that you will see in the top qualities of any sales rep, I think, across the board, on why they're successful. It's the little things that give us big impacts.
Interesting. Yeah, Morgan. Um, and like from your experience, like you obviously really killed it in your role. You know, what kind of led to you choosing to take like the manager approach as opposed to like an individual contributor? Like why didn't you decide to go this account executive role? I'm sure you could have been an enterprise account executive somewhere making thousands of dollars. Like why manager?
Because I knew at the time that me getting leadership experience was unique more than me going to sell. And what I always tell people, that at the end of the day, you can always go sell. Like, you can go anywhere and go learn how to sell. But it's very unique to get a position in a company where they let you go be a leader. And that takes a lot of buy-in from the executives for you to get there. And so I was fortunate in my position that I had executive buy-in to go be that manager on the team. And I had reps that believed and trusted me and what I was doing. And I knew at the age that I was 25, that it was very rare for me to go get another leadership position. So that's why I knew if I take this with heart and do it, that I can learn a lot about leadership and train others on how to do that as well, which I've been able to do in my career thus far. So yeah, the reason I took it is because I knew at some point I'd be able to sell. I knew that you have to go learn that, which is what I'm doing now. But the whole thing is that I knew that if I learned this leadership experience, it's going to help me relate to a lot of people that are in leadership positions, because I can always be like, hey, like I was in that role, so I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. So that's why I ended up doing it. And I didn't want to leave that sales development team. We were a very special team at the organization I was at. So I wanted to make sure that I could leave the place better than when I came into it.
Were there any like challenges that you came across like as you transitioned from like an SDR to now like managing like a group of SDRs who I'd imagine were your counterparts, who you were like working side by side, and now you're managing them?
Yeah.
And like furthermore, like how you kind of like earn their trust on that part as well.
Yeah, man, that's the hardest thing, is earning reps' trust, especially if you're coming in external. Fortunately enough, I was coming internal, but we had people that we were hiring from external to come and do the job, and I had to get their trust. Biggest thing at the end of the day is I always tell people, if you were coming in as a manager, you have to see the separation between church and state. And so what I mean by that is, hey, when we're at work, like I'm the manager, I'm your leader. When we're outside of work, then I can be friends with you and we can hang out. And so I had a lot of reps that I was close with, I'd gone out with. One of my best friends was was one of my reps, right? So it was crazy. But the thing is, I told them, I was like, when we're here in this confine of this establishment, in this building, I am your manager, I'm your boss. And I'm not saying that to like order you around. I'm just saying you have to understand the hierarchy that is here. And so throughout that, that's where I struggled a lot, because it was hard for me to have real conversations with people that I liked, and so that I was friends with. And so it was hard because our SDR team was like a family. And so to be that person now that's like, hey, I'm not really part of the family anymore because now I'm in a different position, it threw me off a little bit. But over time, I was able to overcome that. I struggled with getting in-depth knowledge from my reps as well, because I was in the routine of just doing one-on-ones to do one-on-ones. But then I found out a routine to get people really, truly engaged with me and give me the right answers. And also the biggest challenge was managing up, like making sure you're meeting the expectations of your director and hitting your expectations of the C-suite. That was also hard as well, because that was new to me. So those are all things that I was challenged with and that I struggle with. But I had helpful mentors and colleagues that got me through that to help me get to that next step.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Morgan. And I feel like that's like a perfect kind of roadmap for anyone considering like a path from SDR to SDR manager.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for someone who is, considering going down the AE route from an SDR? Obviously, like two completely different positions and roles and responsibilities. So would love to hear any, feedback or recommendations you have in that regard.
Yeah. So if you're going from an SDR to AE, a lot of things go into that, because if you're an SMB rep, or maybe even going into a full sales cycle role, the whole advice I would have is different than if you're going to mid-market. So it all depends on your organization. Are you going to SDR to mid-market? Are you going to SDR to SMB? Those are things you got to think about. But as a whole, like when I'm really, really thinking about it, is the whole thing at the end of the day is, one, you should be listening to calls from AEs. You should be listening to those, not on a daily basis, but at least bi-weekly if you know you're going to get promoted. And also you should already start practicing what is the discovery call. Like, how do you run that? What's the starter questions that you're asking? How are you doing the right discovery? Those are things that you should be thinking about a lot, because that's going to help you become a really good rep. I think number 3, what you should already start doing is making sure you understand what is the knowledge base I need to learn. So how do I go against competitors, and how do I do it that right? That's the right way. Those are things you got to be thinking about as well. And then also, as an additional step there, is go ahead and start talking to your leadership about what they look for in their AEs, because each culture is different. Maybe they want AEs to be really good at discovery, like I just walked you through. Maybe they want their AEs to be really good at prospecting. Again, this is stuff I don't know because I don't know your organization, but these are things you should be thinking about. And then on top of that, you should be studying psychology and human behavior, because that's going to help you accelerate deals as well.
Awesome. That's super helpful, Morgan. Definitely appreciated. And I guess I know we kind of touched upon this earlier in the podcast, but are there any like daily rituals or maybe that you did as an SDR to just, take steps towards success, or any like daily steps that you have that you recommend to like SDRs out there just to kind of get like into that mindset and just that they crush it every single day?
Yeah, I would say come in the mindset of, hey, I'm going to schedule a meeting every single day. That was my goal. Every single day, I'm going to schedule a meeting. So that was my mindset. Did I do it every single day? No, but the goal was every single day, let's schedule a meeting. And that sets you up for success. Another byproduct of that is I did prospecting on the weekends. So again, some people might not be able to do this because you might have named accounts, you might have strategic accounts, but let's just say you're greenfield or you have opportunity to prospect. So what I did is I just found net new accounts. And then what I would do is I would do 2 weeks of hyperactivity. And because I did 2 weeks of hyperactivity, that allowed me to schedule more meetings in those first 2 weeks, which helped me hit goal by my 3rd week of the month, which in the 4th week of the month, the last week, instead of me struggling and pounding all over the place, I did that to strategically set myself up for the next month. So you should be proactively thinking about, how can I be strategic enough so I'm hitting goal in the 3rd week of the month, so that in the last week, I'm focused on the next month as well. And so it created this cycle of success for me personally that allowed me to get me to where I wanted to go. And also, like, as a follow-up on top of that as well, what you should be focused on is what is your schedule like? I talked about this earlier, but I came in early, I scheduled out emails, and I got myself prepared for the day before anyone got in. But if you say later, maybe you can make later calls. So I always tell people, like, the success, what it really comes down to is just being organized and being consistent. There is a lot of little nuances there, but those things you should be focused on to really get you to where you need to go.
Absolutely. Helpful advice. Morgan, obviously, like every day now, like there's more and more tech companies that surface, more opportunities that come up and jobs. Like, where do you think the future of the SDR role and like just tech sale roles in general will be like in 15 years from now?
Yeah, 15 years. So I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen is the inbound SDR role is going to diminish. Not everyone's going to be gone, but it's going to diminish.
Mm-hmm.
Tools like Drift will come into play and replace the inbound SDR. And then also on top of that as well, outbound SDRs, they will start to be less of SMB and mid-markets. They will be more enterprise SDRs working more with enterprise AEs because they have to be more targeted. The SMB and mid-market SDRs will be focused on persona-based messaging and industry-based messaging, which will be a lot of plug and play because AI will, in 15 years, will evolve ridiculous by then. And then what we'll start seeing more of is AEs being tasked to prospect more, which is why I'm saying SDRs will be less. But in that, the AEs will now be full sales cycle AEs if you just came from an SDR. So now you're being tasked to prospect an X percentage. And then also if you're mid-market enterprise, you'll be tasked to prospect, just not as much. And so that's where I see the future of prospecting and sales development. And in 15 years, those are the developments that you'll see. But again, 15 years is a lot that can happen as well, right? But that's like my prediction and where I see it going.
That's very interesting. I think this is a good couple last questions. I know we got to head out here shortly, but in the realm of prospecting, Morgan, like for any SDR out there that's thinking like, I'm an SDR, I've been an SDR for 8 months, like I'm tired of prospecting, I want to close deals, and they've been pretty consistent so far, but you know, for whatever reason, they're just thinking about that next step, even though they're obviously developing these really core prospecting skills, like you mentioned. Like if they like said that in front of you, or you happen to overhear that, like what would you say to them if they're just like tired of prospecting, they're good at it, but they're just so focused on that next step and they're so focused on that next AE role?
Yeah, you gotta master skill. I always tell people that, like, you're good, but are you good? Like, are you hitting over 100% every single month? Are you like the 120, 140, 160 consistently? Like, mastering the skill is paramount because once you go close deals, you still have to go prospect. It doesn't go away. Like, there still is an aspect of that. And also, based on the data, if you get promoted in less than 12 months, there's a 54% fail rate. If you get promoted more than 14 months after, it's a 14% fail rate. So you don't want to be in that high percentage fail rate because you're not ready yet. There's still a lot of things you have to develop and learn along the way. And so when I tell people that, it's you have to develop yourself in a way that leads to success, and you need to master the skill. It's the number one skill that people complain about every single year, according to the data and reports. So if you can master prospecting and be like, I'm going to get the best at this, then you can do anything else you want. So don't rush the process. Really, like, delve deep into this because there isn't a lot at stake yet. There isn't a lot at stake by prospecting and scheduling meetings. There's a lot more at stake when you start closing deals because there's a lot more expected of you. So take this time while there's not a lot at stake, the pressure isn't as high as an AE, and really learn the skill sets that you need to learn. So when you transition to the AE role, you can dominate it and be successful.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. And just have one last quick question, Morgan. I always end off the podcast with this very question here. For anyone listening out there that is potentially considering a career as an SDR or in tech sales, maybe not from a tech background and just not too sure if this is a potential career path for them, like you mentioned with the whole sales stigma, like what advice do you have for them?
So just coming into the SDR role?
Yeah, let's just say SDR role.
Yeah, so I just see people's advice, go into SDR role, maybe if you're going to AE role or manager, whatever that is, like truly embrace that role and continuously ask questions. Look, if you're coming in the SDR role, your whole goal should be, how can I learn as much about the company as possible? reading blog posts, right? Getting different case studies and reading those, asking questions. I think at the end of the day, in order to be successful, and I sometimes get myself in the gap and I don't do this, is proactively ask questions to the people around you and get that feedback and then execute on it. People have the answers. So if they already have the answers, get those answers and then execute on them in your own style. And I guarantee you'll skip a couple steps and you'll be thankful that you did. Just take away the ego of you being like, hey, I have to learn everything myself. People already have the answers. People already have the blueprint. Take that, do it how you need to do it, and then execute on that.
Got it. So definitely lean on the people internally there for knowledge,
Yeah,
for sure.
they're there. They're there. So just go ahead and lean on that and get the success from that standpoint.
Awesome. Really appreciate it, Morgan. And if anyone listening out there would like to message you directly or learn a little bit more about like the JBarrows Sales Training, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So super simple, Morgan J Ingram on LinkedIn. And then if you want to find me out anywhere else, SDR Chronicles and JBarrows website.
Absolutely. Morgan, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been a huge honor. I'm a huge fan of your work, and keep doing what you're doing, man. You inspire me every day and inspire thousands of other SDRs. So again, thanks so much for being a great guest here. And thank you, Sales Dev Squad community out there. We will catch you guys on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, man.